Teresa Hallback disappeared on October 31, 2005. She was a 25-year-old photographer who worked for the magazine Auto Trader. She had come to Manitowoc County that day to visit several homes and photograph vehicles for the magazine. Her last stop was Avery's Auto Salvage, where she took pictures of Stephen's sister's minivan that he had put up for sale. She was then reported missing on November 3rd, 2 days after the Avery bill passed through the state legislature. Police conducted an aerial search of Manitowoc County in search of her vehicle, which they said would be a major key in the investigation. This car was a 1993 dark green Toyota RAV4 and was found by Pamela Sturm, a member of the search party that surveyed the property on November 5th. At this time, Stephen and other family members were 96 miles away in their cabin in Crivets. The car was missing both its license plates and was covered up by tree branches and the hood of another car in Avery's Auto Salvage Yard. It had a prominent spatter of blood next to the ignition. Later that day on November 5th, police searched Avery's trailer for 2.5 hours and found no evidence of her murder, seeing only the receipt of Avery's payment to her. The next day, police searched his garage, finding no evidence that Teresa had been there. Calumet County Sheriff's Department called in members of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department to support them with resources and officers to aid in the search. The Calumet County officers were told to keep a close eye on the Manitowoc County officers, as the search was not under their jurisdiction and all evidence had to be seized by Calumet County officers only. They also interviewed Stephen's 16-year-old nephew, Brendan Dassey, who told investigators that he had no contact with Teresa and had no knowledge of what had happened to her. November 8th was a big day for the investigation. It was the 4th day of the property search, during which the Averys were not allowed on their property. On this day, human cremains, including pieces of human bone and teeth, were found on the Avery property, and the key to the RAV4 was found in Stephen Avery's bedroom under a pair of shoes. The key contained traces of Avery's DNA, and the blood in the RAV4 was determined to have been that of Stephen Avery. On November 9th, Stephen Avery was arrested and interrogated by detectives Mark Wiegert and Tom Fossbender without an attorney present. This is an excerpt from the interrogation.
How is your family going to be when they think you're a cold-blooded person? If you made a mistake, they'll understand that.
Yeah, but if there's a crooked cop...
So you're telling me somebody planted the body?
I didn't do it.
Who did it?
I don't know.
Steve.
I don't know.
Steve, think of your family here for a
I
second.
am thinking of my family.
No, you're not. You're thinking of yourself.
No.
You're thinking of yourself.
And we don't blame you for doing that. God damn it, yes, 17 years in prison for something you didn't frickin' do.
I didn't do this one.
And we understand that.
You made a mistake.
No, I did not.
You made a mistake.
I didn't do that. How can I make a mistake?
So you intentionally killed her. Is that what you're telling me?
No, I didn't. I didn't do
And
nothing.
how did it happen? Explain to me how it happened.
The day after Avery's arrest, the depositions for his civil lawsuit against Manitowoc County ceased, and the state discontinued its efforts to compensate Avery for the wrongful rape conviction. He received a $400,000 settlement from Manitowoc County, a small fraction of his $36 million request. In exchange for this payment, Manitowoc County did not accept responsibility in the rape case. On November 15th, Stephen Avery was charged with the murder of Teresa Hallback, mutilation of a corpse, and illegal possession of a firearm. On January 17, 2006, Avery pled not guilty to the charges. At the preliminary hearing for the trial, Daniel Kucharski, deputy of the Calumet County Sheriff's Department, testified that the RAV4 key was not seen in the initial search of the room, but was only found after 2 members of the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department, Sergeant Colburn and Lieutenant Lank, searched the room. In late February, Stephen used his money from the settlement to hire defense attorneys Dean Strang and Jerry Buting. His trial began February 12, 2007 in Calumet County. As the trial began, the prosecution attempted to separate his past exoneration with this particular case for the jury. On the other hand, the defense continually discussed his false rape conviction and the sheriff's need for vengeance. Now let's get into the evidence. At 5:36 on the day of the alleged murder, Stephen called his fiancée Jody, who was serving time in county jail for a DUI. The call lasted 15 minutes and was recorded as per jail regulations. Jody says he was acting completely normal and in no way rushed. Teresa's brother Mike Hallback testified that after a series of unanswered calls to Teresa on November 3rd, he logged into her voicemail box using her password and listened to her voicemails but did not erase any. a network engineer was brought in as an expert on the topic. He claimed that looking at her phone records and voicemail box, the only way it could have stored a following message on November 16th would be if one or more messages was erased. A colleague of Teresa's, Tom Pierce, testified that she complained to him one day about someone calling her at all hours of the day. He said she ignored these calls. Special Agent Tom Fossbender, the co-lead investigator in the case, testified at the trial. Through the defense's questions, it was made clear that Fossbender and his team did not investigate anyone else close to Teresa, including her roommate, who did not report her missing for 3 days. Ryan Hallegas, Teresa's ex-boyfriend of 5 years and longtime friend, along with her roommate Scott Blodorn, testified that they got onto her phone records by guessing her password in order to see if anything was going on. The police never asked for his or Scott's alibi on October 31st. You'll recall that the Calumet County officers were told to keep a close eye on the Manitowoc County officers, but the one day their supervisor was not there, the key was found. It was revealed in court that the only DNA found on the RAV4 key was that of Stephen Avery, and there was a cut on his finger but no fingerprints in or on the vehicle. Nick Stalk, a bloodstain analyst, testified that the bloodstains in the cargo portion of the RAV4 seemed to be a result of the dragging of bloody hair across the surface. Stephen's defense team was then able to obtain a warrant to look through the DNA evidence taken in the rape trial in the 80s, and they found that the styrofoam box that contained his blood sample was ripped open. At the top of the tube that contained the blood, there was a tiny hole, just about the size of a hypodermic needle. The defense called a lab technician to the stand, who testified that the lab that ran the tests on that blood did not use that type of needle. After this was revealed, the state requested that the FBI use a new chemical test on the blood found in the RAV4 to determine if it contained chemicals from the test tube. All of this evidence paled in comparison to what would later be revealed in a confession by one of Stephen's family members. Keep listening to find out.